Hello, everyone. This is Sibel Edmonds. I just published this breaking news. It hasn't been published, it hasn't been broadcast anywhere other than my channel. I just published it in Turkish a couple of hours ago. It went up, and now I am recording the English version because it is breaking news. Again, it's mostly for my friends around the world who connect with me via English language and a very few minute minority community members here in the United States. This report is not meant for majority USA, but it is a breaking news. It comes from sources, inside sources, confirmed by two sources um, who have connections. They have been to a few meetings, behind closed door meetings in Chatham House organization, and a report that was published that they had commissioned Chatham House on expanding and adding a new branch arm to NATO and how that can be possible. As you know, as many of you may know, NATO didn't start as NATO in terms of name after the World War II. It started as the Western Union Defense Organization, WUDO, and later more countries joined, and it transformed into NATO, okay, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, uh, for the past 15-20 years, okay, this started during Obama administration, per Israel's, as this is per Israel's request and push, President Obama tried to add a branch to NATO, calling it the Middle East NATO, right? To cover the region, the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, okay, Bahrain, all the way up to Jordan. And it didn't go anywhere because the conditions, the circumstances were not ripe enough. They had not done enough theater, staged uh, events and things to make it possible. And because the top member of the Middle East NATO has always been planned as being the country, the occupying country of Israel. So imagine Israel being the top in a Middle Eastern NATO, and the other countries under this Middle Eastern NATO branch being the Muslim countries whose governments are all installed, their kingdoms are all installed by Israel and the United States and the UK. Okay, these are not organically chosen by people or elected governments, but the people of these countries, being Muslims, being witness to Israel's genocidal practices and operations, could have never accepted this kind of a membership, being part of a NATO, Middle East NATO, led by Israel and the United States in that region. So Obama could not make it happen. Okay, when Trump was elected, he wanted to plug it in per Israel's instructions. But again, at the time, we had so much going on. We had the Syria situation is still lingering, other situation, the Ukraine stuff being at the height of it, beginning height of it against Russia, supported by NATO, EU, and the United States. Okay, so it had to be kind of postponed. But it was one of the objectives for Trump to do it during his first term. Believe me or not, Biden administration, and you can check, I'm going to have all the links on at my site, patreon.com/Edmonds, Sibel Edmonds. Biden also toyed with implementing, trying to make this a reality for the nation, occupying nation of Israel. And as you know, we had other theaters happening at the same time. We had all the stuff with COVID, and it didn't happen. Now, with his second term, as soon as he won the elections, starting in January, February 2025, Trump Trump, with Israel being his boss, right, the ruler, made it its number one on his agenda. You know, the objectives that each president brings in, some of them really close to their heart or dictated very forcefully by their deep state rulers. For Trump, that was placed on number one. This time around, though, what was concocted, and this was by Israel and the UK, was in order to make it a reality, in order for make it happen, we need to stage and have other steps, one by one, very well calculated, to make this a reality. And this was in February 2025. Four people, big names, connected to the Chatham House. They were commissioned by writing and analyzing, two of them Israelis. This paper is 83 pages on how to make this happen. What kind of things would make it palatable and acceptable to the people of those Arab nations? Saudi Arabia, number one, being there, right? And then, of course, Kuwait and Qatar, and then to a lesser degree, because their people are mostly foreigners, UAE, people in the UAE, Bahrain, etc. Okay? And also, what kind of situations would speed up this implementation of bringing this into reality and actually announcing that here now is official, we have the METO, Middle Eastern Treaty Organization, as a strong arm of the current, for the past over half a century, NATO. Okay, so the plan and the reports, as they were working, the analysts, and saying what kind of theater stages we should write to make it happen, one of the ingredients for it was the Trump's, this is Abraham Accords number 3, that Abraham Accord can be a tool to be implemented towards making the Middle Eastern NATO a reality. It had nothing to do, it has nothing to do with Gaza and the genocide and the two-state solutions. The entire game and play, okay, and this was very well calculated by Israel and dictated to Trump, okay, and his administration, to play the Abraham Accords towards creating the Middle Eastern NATO. How? First, you get to have those Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain and Kuwait and Dubai, right? All these countries, including Turkey, officially recognize Israel as a nation and as the superior power. That is like the number one condition that they all have to sign on to, okay? And you can go look at it. Don't take my word. These are the countries with people who can never stomach such despicable act, saying we are Muslim countries, you represent us, okay, in words, and you go and we don't accept Israel, we don't recognize Israel. Look at what they have been doing. So initially they signed on 3-4 countries, but behind the scene, and this is 9 months ago, okay, this is last September, October, behind the closed doors, countries, US Israel puppet regimes like Erdogan and Saudi Arabia, etc., they gave Trump and Israel their words saying, we are with you as the president, as the king, okay? However, our people will behead us, okay? There will be a revolution in our countries, okay? So yes, we are your puppets. Yes, we accept it, but we can't formally accept it. So put us on the column that says accepted, which they did. Erdogan, when he came to the United States on September 25th, 2025, he accepted it. He gave his word. He's like, now we have to come up with a way where you can help me make it palatable for my people in Turkey. Okay? Same exact scenario with Saudi Arabia. They didn't decline, okay? Those puppet regimes, okay? Turkish regime as well. They didn't say no. They just said, we're going to think about it. Because meanwhile, Israel and the US already had some plans in place so that they could make it more likely, more palatable for those Muslim people in those countries. This includes Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait, so that they won't go and get rid of their regimes getting so angry. Okay, I'm going to get to that. So they gave their words, but they put themselves basically, I owe you and I'm going to deliver, but let's put it there first. You got to synthetically create a situation where it would make it more palatable. So Abraham Accord was, okay, that was the number one step that they came up with this report as well, and it worked, okay, but it needed other supplements, okay. The other supplements, again concocted by Israel and implemented by the United States of America, was start this war theater with Iran. Okay, Iran had nothing to do with the planning. Okay, Strait of Hormuz was open and free to all. Iran had already agreed on the uranium, and Iran had already said we would let the people inspectors coming in and all that. There was like zero clause, zero cost or anything for the US to go and attack Iran, right? Bomb Iran. But it was created on purpose, and then it was dragged on purpose, and it was played by Israel and the United States as its tool in such a way that would make the people of those Gulf state nations, Saudi Arabia, right, Bahrain, all of them, more susceptible to accept Middle Eastern NATO. And some of you who are savvy geopolitically and have been paying attention, you already know how this method, right, this synthetically created situation actually almost, I would say, achieved that. What happened here? Of course, they calculated it. They calculated that, of course, Iran is going to respond. And they have drones, right? They have their own missiles. But with the range of their missiles, who are they going to target? Those countries that house US bases, right? Such as Kuwait and UAE, right? Bahrain, especially, right? Right? So this is the reason the US actually, on purpose, and Israelis order for the US, played hands off. And I don't know if you were paying attention at the time back in March and April, they were kicking and screaming, the puppet regimes in these countries. They're like, the US left us alone, and our airport in Dubai is shut down. Every day we are losing $15 billion. Tourism is gone, financial stuff is gone. Iran is hitting us, and you're not doing anything. You left us to fend for ourselves. And you started it, right? Remember, people, that was happening? And yet, US basically evacuated all those bases. They let the countries there, right, become the recipient of these drones and missiles, and for the people of those countries getting so frightened, saying, holy crap, nobody is protecting us. US is nowhere to be seen. We are left alone. Iran can destroy our water filtration system. Iran can destroy our cables underground. They can destroy us. And we are powerless. We are islands, right? That's exactly what Israel and the US wanted to create. That was the whole purpose of war. It had nothing to do with uranium or hormones or anything else. Okay? And that's exactly how it played. Because think about it. Think about it. After going through these 3 months, which US made sure it kept getting prolonged and prolonged, with anxiety of the people of those countries rising higher and higher. And of course, the deep state's tentacles that you watch, the talking heads on X and all these channels, totally owned by the deep state, right? Elon Musk, Israel, they kept saying, oh, Iran can annihilate Dubai in like 2 hours, people. You see those buildings, the skyscrapers. Imagine having no water there, air conditioned. Pretty soon it's going to be summer. So what they were doing, these former CIA and these mother effers, they were helping play the game, right? Making, because it's in English and it's watched all over the world, right? X is open. So they knew the target were not the Americans when they were giving these talks. All of these motherfuckers with millions of, they are all part of the deep state. They're all fake, right? People in Bahrain, most people in Dubai, they speak English. They understand English. They were listening, and what is that is being induced? Anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. Oh, all the scenarios that Iran is capable of and can do. US is not protecting us. They are not entering, defending us, right? That was all staged, all for the end game. The end game being, and that's exactly what happened, okay? First, they decided, and this is September 25th, 2025, before Iran war, as the Abraham Accord thing was being pushed behind the closed door meetings, when Trump got the promise from President of Turkey, the regime Erdogan, it was um, Abraham Accord, but it was also, they decided that they were going to do, after this Iran war, that was already planned. Everybody was in the game, okay? They being the NATO, the US, they were going to make an announcement and saying the next NATO summit, right? The most important historically coming up, and it's going to happen in Turkey. The NATO summit is going to be held in Turkey. The decision was made in September, October 2025, but it was not announced until like February, March, right? 2026, because it was part of the game, right? What are they going to announce? Okay, METO. Okay, they're not going to call it initially that. It's going to be the initial stage of that NATO branch. However, that's exactly what it is. And it's going to be in Turkey. And all these Arab countries are going to be attending. Guess who else they invited? Another country that's going to be part of this Middle Eastern NATO, Syria's Shura. He is invited to participate in this NATO summit in Turkey in 3 weeks from today. It's going to be on July 7th, July 8th, 2026. 3 weeks from today, that summit is going to take place in Turkey. And the biggest plan, and I'm exposing it, nobody has exposed it. This is the first time humanity is hearing it. And as I said, this is for my people around the world, my friends, my community, okay? They're going to announce this. That's why Shiraz invited, because Syria is going to be part of this. The Israeli US created Al Qaeda, ISIS terrorist, now the president, leader of Syria, is going to be and has already been invited. Okay, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, all the Arabs, right? The puppets are all, and it's a NATO summit, right? Okay, and look at the invitees, and you're like, what the fuck? You know, NATO, what is happening? Okay, now that is happening July 7th, July 8th. This is breaking news. I'm basically messing with there because nobody has leaked it. I got two sources. I got to see some of the reports they show me. I have even copy pasted some of the paragraphs. That's for that. Now, another genius reason Israel helped the United States Trump with this idea has to do with, you know, how NATO, Trump has been saying nonstop, we want to be out of NATO. We are so tired of paying for NATO. They are broke financially, they are, especially with the Ukraine war that the NATO and the United States created, the deep state, right, against Russia. They are in the verge of collapse economically. They don't have any more money. So they've been coming and asking the United States for more money, because Ukraine war has drained their economy, right? First, they were hit with COVID too. So a combination, they don't have any more money, right? And the US economy is really tanking as well. So Trump has been saying, F that, I don't want to pay for this. Well, killing two birds with one stone, right? With Israel and this Chatham House, this plan is by bringing those rich Arab nations, Kuwait and Qatar and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, the UAE, okay, the oil nations. One of the things that we would plug in and make possible is they have to contribute into the mother NATO, because Middle Eastern NATO is an arm and it's going to be a very strong arm, okay? But as part of the condition that NATO would defend them as an entire NATO if Iran or one day Russia or one day China attacks these miserable, pathetic islands, they would have muscles behind them, right? Because after all, they are the Middle East NATO, okay? But in return for that, they have to contribute and pump in tens and billions of dollars a month into Ukraine, okay, and the war against Russia. So the Europeans will get some sort of relief, and Trump can say, hey, see, now we don't have to pay all this money. Now they are dishing out for these wimps and etc. So that was killing the second bird with the same stone, which is going to happen July 7th, July 8th. They are going to be part of this start of the Middle East NATO, and they're going to start pumping money in return for the promise of defense from Mother NATO and the US and Israel against today Iran, tomorrow Russia, the next day is China. Breaking news. Nobody has reported on this. I have two sources. I have seen the documents. Okay. Now, people, another interesting thing that is also sees will show you how this plan has been working. Just less than 2 months ago, Ukraine's Zelensky ended up visiting all these Arab countries. Okay, behind a closed door, he was kissing their hands and thanking them because they have already committed. Okay, their kings and queens and Erdogan. So look at the map, look where Ukraine is and where Bahrain is. The first natural reaction question would be WTF? Why is he going all the way to Bahrain and Qatar? And what's the deal? Well, the deal was what was being sealed. And the Iran war theater was to make sure that it is sealed. And he was going to give his thanks, basically saying for what's going to be coming from Saudi Arabia that he visited, Qatar, he visited. He went to Syria. Okay, and then all of them basically they put the red carpet for Zelensky, and then he came to Turkey and met with Erdogan, and so that is also part of this game, and that's what the war against Iran was about. Okay, that's what Abraham Accord has been about. All right, and as I just told you, and you have seen, you can go and check. You don't have to take my word for it, but Shira, for the first time, was invited to Europe, European countries, right? European countries, they too, they roll the red carpet for this Al Qaeda, ISIS terrorist Shira in Europe. Check on those and look at the timeline and see what are the things that are really taking place in the world theater with the scenarios and everything written by Israel and the deep state USA. Okay, I am going to get into the details of this, okay? July 7th, July 8th is the NATO summit in Turkey. I'm going to quote from the paragraphs that my internal whistleblowers gave me from UK, and I'm really thankful for them. By the way, the four involved in this academic analysis that they prepared, it was commissioned a year and a half ago. Two Israelis, one American, one British, from what I have been told, okay? And so much more details. I'm going to cover them on my website, and that's where I take questions from people. I also publish a lot of links or attach documents related to my reports. That's where that's my home. Patreon.com/Sibel Edmonds. So if you come and become a member, monthly contributing members there, you will be plugging in, and you can plug in, and I will be having multiple live sessions, podcast sessions on this, and the links for you there. Those of you who are not able to commit to that website, my home, patreon.com/Sibel Edmonds, you can, if you can, please contribute via buymeacoffee.com/Sibel Edmonds. I will put the link there. I just started that for my YouTube channel because, as you know, if you go and look, I have been hands off with YouTube. I have always said I don't want to play on their playground, right? In their playground, the deep state, whether it's Elon Musk, assholes, X, or whether it's where you're watching me right now. So it's the site that I don't have in the past. I haven't put any focus, and you can see that if you go down, you see I haven't been a YouTuber, but because of so much demand from other countries, people around the world saying, please, please make it accessible so we can tune in and get some of these important breaking news or your investigative series on the Balkans and Epstein's and etc. I am trying to do it here. That doubles my work. So if you're here and you have tuned in and you enjoy this breaking news, if you can, join me at patreon.com/Sibel Edmonds. If you can, contribute whatever you can. You determine the amount via buymeacoffee.com/Sibel Edmonds. And don't forget to subscribe if you like this content and like this video, and help share it via your social media and networks. Much respect, much love to all of you. This is Sibel Edmonds. Hope we can connect at patreon.com and go over these details because there's so much more. I just wanted to give you the gist of it. We'll see you soon.